Hello and welcome to this week's edition of This Week in Agriculture, a presentation of the Communications Unit, Ministry of Agriculture. I'm your producer and host, Christopher Holder. On this week's presentation, we bring you highlights of a symposium hosted by the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, an agency of the Ministry of Agriculture. Over the past week and a half, they've been hosting consultations with poultry producers across the country, talking about the issues and challenges facing those farmers and how those challenges and issues can be overcome. On Friday last, they hosted the national consultation where all the poultry farmers of the country came together, some 200 odd poultry producers, small and medium scales, including the big ones like Bounty Farm and so on, to discuss the issues collectively. They were addressed by President Dr. Irfaan Ali, and of course he announced a number of measures that will seek to provide relief to poultry farmers. They've received good news about access to financing at very concessional interest rates. We'll be hearing about all those interventions on this week's edition of This Week in Agriculture.
Guyana's rice farmers are set to cultivate the largest crop of rice since 2021's first crop, with GRDB projecting a record 220,000 acres to be cultivated for the second crop this year. The GRDB is, however, urging farmers to stop the use of Pronto, a risk jeopardizing Guyana's lucrative EU markets. To this end, the GRDB has rolled out a countrywide awareness program to inform farmers of same and the measures that need to be taken at the farm level to allow for continued exports to the EU market. The Guyana Rice Development Board, GRDB, is assuring rice farmers that viable alternatives to Pronto remain available to them for use against the paddy bug in the upcoming crop this year. These are Caprid, Tengard, Abamectin, Fastac, Bestac, etc. The Guyana Millers and Exporters Development Association, GRMIDA, has also joined in urging farmers not to use Pronto for paddy bug control in the upcoming crop. Extension officers of the board will continue their training exercises with farmers throughout the country and provide all necessary support in moving the industry forward. A message from the GRDB, Ministry of Agriculture.
Guyana's agriculture sector is on the rise, with government set to spend close to $40 billion on infrastructure development and support for the nation's farmers this year. Guyana now leads the CARICOM region's Vision 25 by 2025, that is, reducing the region's food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. That's less than 2 years away. The scope for wealth generation for the nation's farmers and stakeholders has never been more evident. Now is the time to get involved in this agriculture revolution. To this end, Guyana's premier educational entity dedicated to training youths in a range of agriculture-based disciplines is inviting applications for the new academic year beginning September this year. Established some 60 years ago, the Guyana School of Agriculture, GSA, offers a range of certificate and diploma courses in general agriculture, as well as specialist courses such as forestry, animal health and veterinary public health, fishery studies, and agro-processing. Students interested in pursuing studies at the Guyana School of Agriculture can visit the GSA's application portal at www.gsapplicationsgy.com. Application forms can be uplifted from the Monrepo East Coast Demerara headquarters or from the Essequibo campus. Closing date for applications is July 31, 2023. Applicants for all programs must be at least 17 years old. For more information on entry requirements, visit the GSA's Facebook page or call 592-220-8958.
President Dr. Irfaan Ali has called on the nation's poultry farmers to play their part in making the local poultry industry more resilient, sustainable, and profitable. He was at the time delivering the feature address at a national symposium organized by the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, GLDA,
and attended by some 200 small, medium, and large-scale poultry producers. The symposium was the grand finale of a series of regional stakeholder consultations held in the various regions over the past week, at which poultry producers were given the opportunity to discuss with government officials from the Ministry of Agriculture and other stakeholder entities issues affecting the industry today and how government can help the industry grow. The opening remarks at the National Symposium was delivered by Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa.
First of all, on behalf of the Ministry of Agriculture and the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this very important forum that has been organized. First, let me express our appreciation to His Excellency the President for his excellent work in promoting agriculture and food security, not only in Guyana, but the recently concluded CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in Trinidad and Tobago, where he has delivered a presentation capturing agricultural development in all the 15 member states. And as Guyanese, we should be proud because with the leadership our president is given to CARICOM, today we have seen a renewed interest in agriculture, and everyone is looking forward to Guyana for that leadership. Let us give the president a resounding round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, Guyana prides itself as being a net food exporter and also to be self-sufficient in livestock production. We are a food-secure country. Today we are producing approximately 60% of the food that we are consuming. And with the leadership by our president, we are seeing today our country is embarking on non-traditional area. Both presentations just now would have captured some of those activities that we have embarked on, things like corn and soya, where we want to be self-sufficient in another 3 years' time. We already have 4 companies that are involved in the production of corn and soya. That is an ingredient that is very important for the poultry industry, the cost of grain, the cost of feed. And if we can produce all our needs and at the same time be a net exporter in the CARICOM, then we will contribute significantly in reducing the food import bill of CARICOM and Guyana. The government will continue to support you in the initiatives that you have embarked on, especially we have heard just now some of the major policies of the government in helping poultry farmers and helping farmers generally around the country to bring down the costs of production, to ensure that we be a country not only producing food at a high cost, but at the same time bring down the cost of production so you, the farmers, can have more opportunities. As such, the government have been working assiduously to provide support to the local producer and establish a business environment which is able to further develop and expand the country's agricultural sector. The government has been providing incentive in priority areas of agro-processing, coconut, corn, and soybeans, beef, and more importantly, poultry production. We are looking forward to be a net exporter in poultry production. That is why we have embarked on a number of initiatives. We have heard the corn and soya project. We have now looking at the breeder project that Dr. Waldron would have spoke of. We have a private farmer who have already started that project. In this year's budget in the Ministry of Agriculture, we have $50 million that have been budgeted to start the breeder program so that we can produce our own hatching eggs, so that we can bring down the cost of hatching eggs. Rather than importing it into the country, we can produce it right here in Guyana. Those are the initiative, forward-looking initiative, the vision. And I want to say, as your Minister of Agriculture, I have been given tremendous support by our president. He has this passion. He has this passion for food security in our country. We have seen what has happened in the world over the last 3 years with the pandemic. Many countries that had large sums of money were unable to procure food for the population because there was a scarcity of food. And we have a president who have this vision to make Guyana once again the breadbasket of the Caribbean. So, ladies and gentlemen, today's initiative, as the chairman rightly said, was an initiative came out from His Excellency the President. We have met with about 50 poultry farmers at a meeting a week ago. And the President said he wants most of the poultry farmers together so that we can brainstorm ideas, we can put new initiative in place so that we can produce, increase our production and lower the cost of production. And here we are today, where we have many poultry farmers, and we are very fortunate to have our head of state to discuss with us, bring ideas together, and work together as a team to develop the poultry industry and the livestock industry in our country.
In presentations made during the symposium held at the Arthur Chung Convention Center, poultry executives pointed to a number of challenges facing the poultry sector today. Issues such as problems associated with climate change and the unrelenting rainfall experienced all across Guyana over the last few years, impact of smuggling of chicken on small-scale farmers, access to land for poultry rearing, etc. In his feature address, President Dr. Irfaan Ali addressed all these concerns and announced a number of immediate interventions. From the outset, the President acknowledged that the poultry industry must be rebuilt into a viable, resilient, and profitable entity.
Today's meeting is not only to deal with the current situation and crisis, it's to position this sector. We're going to do everything that it takes to position this sector to be one of the strongest poultry sector in the region. The government is going to support this tremendously. And when I say the sector, I'm speaking about the small farmers, the medium-sized farmers, the big farmers, the producers, and everyone else. So there are a number of things that we have to do if we are to build a resilient, viable, sustainable, and profitable poultry sector. There are a number of things that has to be done. There are a number of sacrifices that we all have to make. We all will have to give a bit here if we are to achieve the type of vision that we have for this industry. I'm very pleased that the industry stakeholders were able to position the sector in the current global and regional context. Since we met last Wednesday, I've been through a lot of meetings, unlimited sleep, but I got enough time to reach out to many other farmers and to reach out to financial institutions on designing a comprehensive way forward. And what I'm speaking about today is how do we solve the immediate problem, and now how do we build on the current situation to ensure there is sustainability, resilience, viability, and profitability. What David and the others, Dr. Waldron and the others here, technical people, did not say to us also, and they're aware, from 2020 to now, let me back up a bit, because it's important that we understand the industry. Everybody, the consumer see chicken at the end of it. To get the chicken, there's a process. 70% of getting the chicken is feed. 70% of the cost is feed. So let us examine what happened with feed from 2020 to now. There are three important inputs to feed, the production of feed here in Guyana: rice, broken rice, corn, and soya. From 2020 to now, the cost of rice as an input to feed increased by 100%. The cost of soya as an input to feed increased by 65%. And the cost for corn as an input to feed increased by 55%. And that is what constitutes 7% of growing the chicken. Now, what are the contributing factors to this increase in costs? You were told the war in Ukraine. But importantly is the shipping and logistics costs. That is why David is absolutely right. We cannot build a sustainable, resilient, and viable industry if we don't control this cost to begin with. We can eliminate the transport and logistics costs by building up our own capacity and increasing our own yield and production in these three areas. But we have gone a step further. In order for us not to touch the existing rice production, leave the existing rice production for the existing market and the regional market, but for us to build a sustainable model in which we can invest in specific acreage of land as an input for the feed production, which will be a completely new development. It requires 25,000 acres of land to be developed in rice. That is to support the poultry industry. In its current form, I'm not speaking about growth as yet. So, you would have heard that we've started a program. By 2025, 2026, I think we will be self-sufficient in corn and soy. Once what we're seeing as the results continue, we'll be self-sufficient and in a position to supply the region. But there's a difficulty. There's a difficulty. Even if we have overproduction, what do we do with it? Because we can't expand the production and then don't have the facility to store that production. In the whole CARICOM, taking the total demand of CARICOM for corn, soya, and rice, we only have 20% of the storage capacity. So that's another problem we have to address. The storage capacity, because forward planning requires storage. Because even countries who produce corn and soya, if there is a glut on the market, they buy off from the market at very low prices. One, because they have the storage facility. So they have a more resilient way of dealing with the shock. So there are countries when the Ukraine war started that had 6 months forward planning in their system. We had none. The other issue that we are faced with is because of the changes in the global financial system, the credit facility has been removed. That is, the US companies were giving the buyers of corn and soya 3 months credit. They've removed that credit. You have to pay cash up front and then wait for supply. That's another challenge that the industry is faced with. So the proposition today is to develop an integrated and holistic system to deal comprehensively with all of these challenges in building a strong poultry industry. So the first thing is, how do we get our farmers involved in what we call a new integrated approach to food production, not agriculture? We have to change our mindset now. Agriculture is just a component of food production, which means we now have to examine the entire value chain, the forward and backward linkages in the food production chain, of which agriculture is the producer of raw material, if you want to put it that way. So this is the first thing. So we are willing to examine the opening up of 25,000 acres of land and have the farmers participate in growing of rice as an input. So you have another cost center and another possible revenue center for the farmers in the poultry industry. How do we bring you together to do this? That's the first thing. I'm going to come to what we're going to do. The system we'll put in place to do that. So that's the first commitment by government. Suriname is also committing to CARICOM 75,000 acres of land for the production of grains. So if we can form ourselves in a consortium here, we are the closest to Suriname. The area that they've identified is very close to Guyana. Let's form ourselves into a consortium and go after the 75,000 acres of land also for the production of grains. But in this case, will be producing that grain for the regional market, which means now that the port becomes important from a storage perspective. We will have to increase our storage capacity tenfold. David will tell you that in the integrated project, we are doing some amount of storage. So that's another opportunity. Investment in storage, people in our diaspora may want to join us, provide a storage facility. So that will also help us in forward planning. So when there is a glut on the market, the Poultry Association can say this is an opportunity for us to forward buy for the next 12 months. But we can't do that. We can't benefit from situation of glut in the long term. You benefit in the short term because you'll buy at cheaper price for that crop. But if we have the capacity, we can then buy in the long term.
The Guyanese head of state impressed upon the audience the importance of building a brand, which we already have, a halal brand, which allows for international trade to specific markets such as the kosher and halal specialty markets. He made a number of important announcements relative to initiatives for the nation's poultry farmers.
The forward integration that the government is willing to co-invest in now will be, because we're going to push you now to ramp up production. But your problem is that when you ramp up production, there is a glut, you have a problem, right? So we have to solve that. So we are going to push you to ramp up production, but on the end side of it, on the forward planning side of it, we are going to co-invest and support the cold storage facilities in the different regions. So that when you ramp up production and we have period of overproduction, we go into the cold storage. But outside of the cold storage, in the forward planning, I'm now proposing that we have some co-investment in a sausage plant to meet the local and regional demand, a protein plant for aquaculture, because when we ramp up production, we'll have more waste product that can be used for the production of protein for aquaculture. And of course, the chicken nugget facility that comes with the sausage plant. And we create, through the Guyana Marketing Corporation, from now, a brand that will now go through the region, because we have specific trade arrangement with the regions. We have low-hanging opportunity in other large regional markets, like Cuba, like DR. And then, of course, we have emerging potential market in the Middle East. So the government, in the forward part of the integration and the forward planning, is willing to have the co-investment in these areas. On the backward part, we're already working on opening up the 25,000 acres. You have to form yourself into a body. As I said, I also want to address the immediate issue for the small farmers. But before I go there, let me say this. We have committed last week to pay for the vaccines that are needed now. I think it's $29 million. That investment by the government will avoid the $6 increase per chick to be passed on to the farmers. So we are removing that $6 increase per chick to the farmers. We're going to pay for the vaccine. We have already ordered vaccines. I've given the instructions that the vaccines must be ordered. From last week, Wednesday to now, I was able to complete negotiations with Demerara Bank. Because one of the issues farmers there and farmers outside raised with me is the whole issue of some low-cost financing to get back into production. And we have arrived at a position of loans $500,000 and less. This is for the small farmers. They are willing to facilitate a 3.5%. 3.5% interest rate from 7%. Between $500,000 to $1 million, 4%. This is remarkable. But importantly, with a mechanism that we will set up that include the Poultry Association, the GLDA, the Ministry, the Bank and Ministry of Finance. For those with $1 million and less, they will look at using letter of assignment. That is if you're doing contract farming for someone else, as part of the collateral basis to give you those loans, to expedite the pace at which the loan will be granted. That is a major, major accomplishment. Now, between $1 to $5 million, they have agreed to do those loans, between $1 to $5 million at 5.5%. I think this is a great day for the poultry industry, when the financial institutions have all come on board in supporting this transformation. That is why I said we have been working on your behalf to get this done. So you should put your hands together for the banking institutions.
The President also announced that a project implementation unit comprising technical staff from government, along with international partners such as the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, ICA, and from the Poultry Association, will be established and will begin work as early as this week on expediting the process of loans to poultry farmers. This process will be executed at the Convention Center at Liliendaal. The Project Implementation Unit will be responsible for realizing the vision of a new and resilient poultry sector in Guyana, one that is able to withstand the challenges of the day today and way into the foreseeable future.
Well, that's all the time we have on this week's edition of This Week in Agriculture, a presentation of the Communications Unit, Ministry of Agriculture. As you are aware, the Guyana School of Agriculture, they've opened up for applications for the September term. The closing date for applications is July 31. You want to get on board. If you get yourself qualified in agriculture in any of the disciplines offered at the Guyana School of Agriculture, you're able to get on board the agriculture revolution. It's a wealth-generating area of commerce. It's a business that is providing wealth-generating realities for many young people. This is not an old people thing anymore. The average age of farmers as of last year was 67. We've seen a lot of young people come on board now, getting involved in the business of agriculture in all its forms. A lot of the young people looking at the value-added aspect of it, getting into agro-processing. A lot of women going in this direction. And so you get yourself qualified in a particular discipline, then of course you can cash in on this bounty that is coming to Guyana through the business of agriculture. Lots and lots of international entities wanting to come here and invest in agriculture in all of its forms. You want to be positioned so that if they're looking for partnerships, you're there to put your hands up and say, me, pick me. All right, so that's all we have on this week's edition of This Week in Agriculture. I'm your producer and host, Christopher Holder, wishing you all the best. Have a great, great week ahead. Bye-bye.